has been called to order. And the first thing I want to do is I want to thank everybody, the A-team and everybody else that worked on this RSU 38 bond. We did fantastic. And even all the things that Jay did to get everybody aligned in all these meetings that we attend. We heard from the public quite a lot. And there was some good articles written. And it doesn't matter if they're con or pro. I prefer to have both sides put out there. I received many phone calls that want to know about what has happened to the mill rate. That is not for us to decide. That's a town decision. So, but it went over good. Poor Donna had to keep sending things out. I appreciate that. So we're moving on. Citizens' comments. I didn't look over there.
Good evening. I didn't think it'd be this fast. Usually you're further into the meetings. Anyway.
You're too important not to do it first.
Anybody? Thank you. That's nice of you. So give me just a quick second to get my there you go. Good evening. My name is John Harker from Mount Vernon, and tonight I just wanted to address one of the items that I saw that's going to be in the budget, but I wanted to address it before then. And it's in regards to the school resource officers that have been put into the budget to potentially be funded for the schools, which is not a bad idea. So let me start with that. It's not a bad idea, but what I didn't know about, and I'm sure you can't have interaction here to answer questions, but I wasn't sure if there's been a, Jake might be able to answer this, if there's been any, since the Stoneham Douglas High School disaster last year, I didn't know if there had been any additional safety committee meetings, safety and security committee meetings, or groups of people getting together to relook at the safety protocols in the school, and that would lead to recommendations to come forward with developing a resource officer. So, Jay, I don't know if this is appropriate right now, but can you just answer that question, possibly? And then I can.
Are talking about what the schools need around those procedures and protocols to make sure that all of our staff and students are safe within our buildings. So yes, we are having those meetings, and I'll just kind of answer it that way in a general way. So
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I figured you probably would be, and I'm glad, and that shows really good leadership. Well, what I wanted to bring to you tonight was some additional ideas to think about, and I didn't know whether you had been, or you had seen the Public Safety Commission report that came out from Florida on this. It's a 450-page document, and this document was put together after the incident, and it is in super detail as to every single thing that happened there, but also all of the failures along the way, all the way from mental health through how the school itself responded, how the public safety officers responded, how the resource person responded. And this report heavily details all the other school shootings that have occurred over the past 10 or 12 years, or 14 years, it details and summarizes those and the recommendations from those as well. It's a very long document, but there are certain sections of the document that help summarize a number of the recommendations that they gave both to the state and to the school district to improve the whole situation. And so what I was going to do, and unfortunately the Staples copy machine broke down in Augusta about 20 minutes ago, but I was going to come up with copies for each one of you. It spit out 4, but I will leave my copies with you, Jay. And if you wanted a copy, these are sections of the report that I thought were of interest. And I'm hoping, my hope would be that a safety committee, if established, would go down point by point through this document, which again is probably the best document ever I've seen on this, point by point to see, is the school doing these things, or if not, should it be doing these things? Because I think if you do follow through those recommendations, you will then have a school that really is built safely. And when I went down through this, and I just in my mind thought about the school district and what has been done over the past years on this, I'd say we are well along the way to what is a safe school. And Donna did a lot of good work in this regard. And I just wanted to summarize 6, very quickly, 6 statements that tell you some of the issues they saw in Florida that I think that we have kind of thought about or solved here. If you see something, say something. And it's not just the teachers, but the students, to be encouraged. And we have a student teacher advisory committee concept that's been working super. And that helps, emergency anonymous call number other than 911. So the students, parents, faculty feel comfortable calling in if they sense that there's a problem with a student. Mental health services beefed up. Well, our student health center here, it's primo. We have the potential here to be really safe because mental health was one of the hugest issues in that and a number of other shootings. So again, I think we're in good shape. Harden the school. Now, there's one interesting thing about that. There's some new technology out there, which is a simple bar that goes on a door. It's $150 on the inside of the door that shuts that door and locks that door. So the whole issue of locking outside or inside of a school classroom door, they've solved that for $150 for each classroom, so that somebody who was caught in the situation and had to lock that door, it sits right there by the door. You stick it on the door, boom, it locks, just like that. And these doors that swing open with these special upper ones here, there's a thing that slides on there, it locks it just like that, set by the door. $150. Those are the easy solutions. Hardening the school is the issue. We've done a great job here already. School teacher resource officers, so that's the one you're going to be dealing with. But that's way down the list. That's way down the list. So I just want to mention that. And in a rural area, it might not be as important as more urban areas. And then lastly, this is the most controversial, but it came out in this report, the need for school teacher guardian program. And the one teacher that was killed, who had the opportunity to stop that killer, was a veteran. And he was killed himself. But the issue, and they set up, the state of Florida set up this guardian program in his honor, because if he was given, or some teacher in the school system who had the knowledge and the ability and the background to be armed properly, like a resource officer, with the proper training, and they have a whole protocol for all the trainings that have to be done by somebody, by a teacher, in order to be able to have a weapon on the grounds. It would have stopped the killing, period, in that school system. And and this is the most controversial issue in schools today, but they outlined in this report that typically the first people to come in contact with somebody like this is a teacher or an administrator. And minutes are critical. In less than 5 minutes, the majority of that killing was done. And if that teacher or an administrator had had the ability to stop that killer, it would have stopped. So, controversial. That's the sixth thing. So I want to leave you with those thoughts and those ideas. And the report, if no one has ever heard of the report, it is out. It's a wonderful report. And then lastly, Maine Public, I can't remember when this was done, September 24th, 2018. Researchers from the University of Southern Maine say that more than half of Maine school resource officers lack basic training. And that's the big issue. And in Florida, these resource officers have to go through a heck of a lot of training to be able to be a resource officer, be certified and such. And unfortunately, in our state, when the legislature last year tried to put a bill forward to develop a formal program, it got kind of nixed down to, well, you know what, the sheriff can establish a deputy who can then become a resource officer, but he has to be trained through the academy or whatever for law enforcement, and then they can be deputized, and then maybe you could hire him as a resource officer. But that person is going to lack a lot of training for mental health services and for other types of counseling services that are critical in helping have a good relationship with students and teachers and mental health people. So thank you for letting me take the minute to do this tonight, and I'll get this stuff to you, Jay. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Moving on. Any adjustments to the minutes or the agenda by anybody on the board?
Gary, I believe yesterday was Elementary Teacher Appreciation Day, national-wide? Oh, okay. I read an article, it was done yesterday, so. But anyways, regardless, I wanted to thank elementary school teachers.
Anybody else?
I'm good.
Moving on.
I motion to approve the minutes of January 2nd, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Go ahead. Okay.
Sean.
Kathy abstained.
And Sean. I motion to consider the out-of-state field trip, All Eastern Choir, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, April 4th through 7th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's it. Passed.
I move that the computation and declaration of votes dated January 8th, 2019, and attached hereto be approved.
All in favor?
Oh, need a second.
Alex, second.
Oh,
No.
sorry.
As long as it was second.
Do we have to vote, or?
Yep.
Okay.
All in favor? Melissa? Yeah,
Yep.
Did we sign it?
I think we all signed it.
After we do all the votes,
I
we'll
gotta
pass
do
around
the
the paper to
3 lines.
sign.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we got to do all the votes first.
All towns,
It
it's a compilation of all 4 towns together, is the way the vote is counted for the district.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You pass? All in favor?
Just making sure.
Yep.
I move that the computation and declaration of votes be entered upon the records of Regional School Unit Number 38.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I move that a certified copy of the computation and declaration of votes be sent to each of the municipal clerks within the RSU.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Moving on.
Okay, before you move on, we're going to have you guys sign right now. Just because
We're not going to change our mind.
there are 1, 2, 3, I believe there's 5 copies here. So, yeah, do you want me to just have them cross, or, okay.
Elementary teacher.
I move to accept the appointment of first probationary contract teacher Kelly Corrigan.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Passed. Okay, we're going to start the budget workshop. First person up is elementary schools. Da-da-da.
So Jeff Boston's going to start us off, and you'll notice as Jeff gets himself ready, there is a packet that we added that gives you some of the enrollment figures for the various schools and across the RSU, as well as our budget subsidy history. Can't get it to turn the page. What our budget has looked like over the last couple years, 3 years there, and then the regional or state evaluations by town. And again, you've got a couple of years of data there. So just so that you have information as people begin to present, and I know you'll probably have some questions as we go along, so that information is there. Everyone good? All right, then I am going to
Okay, Jeff?
turn it over to Mr. Boston.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking the time this evening to listen to us in our budget proposals. We appreciate it. Just a couple of positive stories from your support from last year. One of the programs, the OWLS curriculum that we were able to acquire at the pre-K level, it's coming in very handy for us, so we appreciate that. We now have a comprehensive kit.
Okay. I feel like coming out around. How's this? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, I won't get a neck strain. This might be a little easier. So, but the ALS curriculum is in now all 3 elementary schools that have pre-K, which is great. It's a comprehensive kit. Before, our teachers had some resources, but not all. And Nancy Harriman's worked well with them on getting that in, as well. And it's theme-based, which is really working out well for our kids. So I want to thank you for that. Also, another positive is your support with our request for classroom library text. We're slowly building up our libraries, and through your support, we're able to supplement new texts each year, and we appreciate that. And the other thing at Reedfield is we've had new families moving in. We have a healthy student enrollment, dedicated teachers and staff. So when looking at my budget for this coming year, there are increases, and it comes in the form of staffing. I am looking at increasing our guidance position from 50% to full-time. We've had an increase in enrollment, but over the years, we've also had an increase in student social and emotional needs. and they need that support. And currently what's happening is our guidance counselor, who's only there 2.5 days a week, isn't able to address some of those or get some of the supports those students need. But so having someone there full-time would allow us that expertise to be able to support the students, support our teachers, connect with families, also look at outside resources to help, whether it's KVBH or helping the family acquire outside counseling. So we currently do not have that. Another staffing increase is I am looking for another teacher at the 5th grade level. We currently have a 4th grade class. The enrollment's been juggling from 26 to about 22. This is a class that in grade 1, K1, were split into 2 grades. In grade 2, they came together. They've had the support of an ed tech with the teacher, and that has continued through 4th grade. Unfortunately, when you break that down, just to give you a little idea of needs, without going into any names, we have currently 3 students in that class that are receiving special ed support through the resource room. We have 3 students that are receiving special ed services through our Readiness Skills program, which is a behavioral program. We have 14 students receiving math intervention, 2 students receiving Title I, and 5 students receiving social and emotional support from either our guidance counselor or KVBH, and that's just a class. So what I'm hoping is, with the addition of a second teacher, we will be able to break that class into 2 smaller classes as they were before, and get them the support they need academically, socially, emotionally, as they get ready for middle school. The other thing to think about too, and just not numbers, is when you look at the class, the enrollment in that class, and you divide it by the minutes that we have to teach our content, that class currently for math, which is a 60-minute period, gets, if you would break it down by individual attention, 2.5 minutes per child. Literacy is about 90 minutes, that's at 0.375. Compared to a class size of 15, it doubles. With math, it would be 4 minutes, and with literacy, 6. So there's obviously a lot more attention the smaller classes are getting compared to this class in particular. And then my last request is we currently have funded for just this year an Ed Tech 2, working with our kindergarten students. We currently have 39 kindergarten students in 2 classrooms. I would like to maintain that position as they go into 1st grade, and move that person up to 1st grade to help them academically. So those are my 3 requests. Any questions? Betty? That's a great question. You're thinking like a principal. You're thinking like a principal. Actually, I do have a position. What I would do with that individual, if this was supported, is I would then move that individual down to kindergarten to help those incoming 5-year-olds adjust to a full day of public education. Because as you know, if any of us have all had kids mature at different levels. Often at the kindergarten level, it takes a lot of the kids at least almost till January to adjust to the rigor and to the social emotional part of school. And getting them off to a great start is what it's all about. So they can be successful, and it will, down the line, will create less intervention support. But excellent question.
Currently, there's no kindergarten ed tech?
Currently, there is, and I would bet it's only funded for this year. It was just funded for this year. We were able to acquire her in November, And then what I would like to do is, that's my second request would be to continue her position and move her up to first grade to move with that class. And you're only allowed to ask one question.
I'm sorry. Third question. So you're increasing by one ed tech. You currently have one in kindergarten, you have one in fourth grade, and,
That's it.
okay. And,
Guidance.
no.
No?
No, I'm
Staying on
still-
ed
I'm
techs.
still on the ed tech.
Okay, we'll stay on the ed techs.
You still want, I don't know exactly what my question is. Are we increasing the number of ed techs? Are there going to be
No.
two ed techs?
Currently, we have two ed techs. One's position will continue, is funded, has been funded since I've got to Reed Field. The second one is a new position, which we were able to acquire in November through the support of Bridget and Jay, and it's just to the end of this year because of our enrollment. We started our year off with 40 students, and my attitude was that these are 5-year-old kids, some were 4 at the time, that need support, a lot of individual support, and having 20 kids with one teacher is not conducive to that. So that position has been funded through June and will end in June. I'm asking for that to continue going into next year. That individual will move up with that class to first grade. Adam?
Just on the enrollment sheet we have
Yep.
next to Reed Field, it says 2.8 for FTE ed techs. Is that because it started later in the year?
Bridget?
The .8 is the ed tech that's in the pre-K program.
Okay.
David?
So if I'm trying to put it together just as you were.
I'm still not
So the total number of ed techs will, if your requests were approved, would be the one that's temporary in kindergarten would become permanent and move to first grade. And then there would be 2 others somewhere?
No, there wouldn't. If you approve this with the ed tax, sticking with the ed tax,
Yeah.
is we would go up by, well, we would maintain currently what we're at, but from the beginning of the year, it would go up by 1.
So it would end with how many?
Okay. What everybody's forgetting is the one ed tech is now helping out in the 4th grade, which will be 5th grade. If he brings in a second teacher, that ed tech will no longer need to help in that grade. So he said he would move that person down to next year's kindergarten. So currently, the proposal doesn't have an ed tech in kindergarten. I mean, the one that's in kindergarten now is moving to 1st grade. So the current proposal is that he doesn't have one with kindergarten, but if he gets the 5th grade teacher, he would move that ed tech that's helping that grade down to kindergarten and add an ed tech basically at the kindergarten level.
Which would give us how many ed techs?
It's still
total?
only 2 ed techs, but we're increasing a teacher. That's where the increase is actually in the teacher level, not in the ed tech level.
But the request on ed techs is that he be allowed to move the one to the kindergarten? Or,
No, the request is to maintain the current position that we funded in November for where the position is in kindergarten right now, but as that class moves up to 1st grade, I would like that position to continue to follow to support those students.
The increase is because the kindergarten ed tech is not part of your budget this year. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. It was meant to just be for the 1 year only, based on the needs of the classroom. So if we're going to want to bring that ed tech along, then it is an increase to the budget.
Any other questions?
So when I read across this page, the fourth grade is only 21 kids.
It has gone up and down, Gary.
Is it 21 or not 21?
Currently, right now, it's 21.
So they're going to be fifth grade next year.
Yep.
And the fifth grade is at middle school.
No,
They're going to move on, aren't they?
no. They will have after in another year, they will. They're fifth, we keep fifth grade. It's a 6 and
Yeah,
up.
the fifth grade right now, which is 34,
Right.
is moving on.
Yep.
So you got 2 teachers up there right now.
Currently, yep.
So that automatically frees up a teacher.
No, it doesn't free up a teacher. Everything shifts.
Down to fourth, you only got 21 kids.
But they will be next year's fifth grade. So you only need 1 in fifth grade, but the 32 in third grade will be next year's fourth grade. And so you'll need to move one of your fifth grade teachers down to fourth grade, because you'll need 2 teachers in fourth grade.
I'm also looking, just to clarify, I'm looking at, if you look at the enrollment sheet, currently we have 2 teachers per grade level with the exception of fourth grade, where we have an ed tech, okay? With my request for an additional fifth grade teacher, that will give me 2 teachers per grade level throughout, K through 5. And you can look at the numbers, Gary, 21 or 26, because we've bounced throughout this. But that class I feel, has been underfunded since they went into second grade. And every year I've asked for a teacher to help split that class up, and I have not received the support. I'm asking again, and I gave you some numbers of the needs of that class. When we talk about that, they're a great group of kids, but academically there's no middle to them. They're either doing very well or they're struggling. And that's why I threw out some of those numbers of services we're currently providing them to give you an idea. It's not so simple as just to look at, well, there's only 21 kids and they're in fourth grade. This should be fine. That's not the case. And they need a lot more support than what 21 shows you.
I know you guys prioritize these later on, but
Correct.
Is that classroom teacher a top priority? It sounds like it is.
It is.
More, I mean, just.
It is, Adam. Absolutely. Okay. Yep.
So does any of these 3 come under Ryan's jurisdiction?
No.
And the other thing I see, most of our kids out of Wayne come over here to Reedfield because you're the best.
I thought Wayne was pretty good, too.
That's what every parent tells me.
Well, thanks. That's nice, Gary. Thank you.
Well, we got to go to Reedfield, not Wayne.
All right. Any other questions?
So,
Yeah.
what would your ideal classroom size be?
That's a loaded question, but what we've typically have had, it ranges anywhere from 14 to about 17 students. I think when you get to the lower levels, the K through 2, it really needs to be closer to 15, just because they're younger. They need that attention. They haven't built up the skills. As you get into 3 through 5, the numbers can get a little bigger, but I really wouldn't want them over 17.
Thank you. And in the younger grades, especially, class size of 15 is the maximum they recommend. And as you're approaching maybe 4 or 5, 18 would be the maximum. In multiple, there's a very longitudinal study called STARS, and they did a lot of research about funding early saves tremendous amount of money later, improves graduation rate. And so if you want to put your assets any place, you put it early and young in small class sizes.
Thank you.
But you also have another page that has a lot of items that you want also.
Yep, yep. That's under regular instruction, yeah. Some of those are maintaining, others are equipment and regular supplies for the classroom. And I know that in the past, as Adam was alluding to earlier, as we go through the process, you've asked us to take a look at our budgets, and some of those things that you're referencing to, Gary, we've had to reduce over time. So this is, like I said, this is just a draft at this point.
And then we have computers for every school there is of 1818. Replace the computer in the front office. You didn't mention that either.
Yeah.
It's the computers for most of the secretaries. Wayne actually received one, I think, last year.
Last year they did.
Last
Yeah.
year, but the other 3 elementary schools and the middle schools' front office computers are getting very old, and they need to be replaced. They're having a lot of issues. So that's, there is a sheet on the other 3 elementary schools. I made that one up, Jeff, so you know, didn't come from you, it came from me. But it is a need. They have to have those computers replaced.
I just have a quick question about the guidance counselor. Are you looking, I mean, the middle school has the behavioral component, I guess. Is a strict guidance counselor what you're looking for, or do they have some aspects into the behavioral? And that's just because I don't know what the role of a elementary guidance counselor is.
Sure. Our guidance counselor currently goes into classrooms to teach different social skills to our students, as well as doing pull-out for individual sessions. It could be anywhere from having a lunch with a group of students to actually working one-on-one closely with a skill deficit that they have and working with the parents on that. Ultimately, we need access at the elementary levels to what the high school and middle school have with social work services, but I'm not looking for that right now. I'm looking for just some consistency for support, the social emotional support for our students and our teachers, which we currently don't have. We're doing the best with the schedule that she has. It's not her fault. She's doing a good job. It's what she's been tasked with for time.
So totally, you're looking for 120,000.
Roughly, yeah. You gonna write a check, Gary?
Well, that is the question that we're all going to have to work on really hard, is whether we can write those checks. On the counselor, to me, it segues very well into the citizens' report on just one of the many issues as far as security for all of us was mental health support. And just as with their class sizes, with their education, with their mental health and social stability, for me at least, supporting the children early is saving us a lot of additional costs and extra interventions at a later point. How much we can afford is going to be a continuing debate, but what we can do to address that goes a long way. Thank you.
Sean?
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
So next up will be Mrs. Delmeyer from Mount Vernon and Wayne.
This is a little awkward. Hi, everybody. Like Jeff, I'd like to just take a few minutes and thank the board for your work and your past support for some of the different programmings and materials that we've been able to implement across the elementary schools. Jeff mentioned the OWL curriculum in our pre-Ks. It's certainly being used in Mount Vernon. Some of the supplies are continuing to support our science curriculums that Nancy Harriman's been working with elementary teachers across the district for years to really build up those inquiry-based and exciting units and buying the materials for those things, and that's been super helpful. I know my math interventionists have also used some new materials called Do the Math, Marilyn Burns' work, and that's been really instrumental in the intervention supports they're giving. So again, like Jeff has said, I'd like to thank you for your support and hearing about the needs of our students. Moving forward, I wanted to tell you that we spent a lot of time working on our budgets. I've met with Bridget a few times before turning them in, and then again when you agreed to your goal of promoting student success in all areas as we strive for academic excellence while maintaining fiscal responsibility. So while thinking of those things, what do our students need and how do we manage those things in a smart way, I have 3 things I'd like to propose this year. In looking at both Mount Vernon and Wayne, I'd like to take the current guidance counselor position, which is 80%. Currently, the counselor works between those 2 schools, and it's 4 days a week, and I'd like to move that position to 100%. And I think that would go a long ways to help support the students. As Jeff talked, we have a lot of need at Mount Vernon and Wayne. Those are our 2 Title I schools. You earn that title of being a Title I school based on your free and reduced lunch count. Mount Vernon is at the highest it's been since I've been in this district. Actually, we've gone to the 50% mark, which enabled us to get some other supports from the state with the SNAP program. So correlating with the economically disadvantaged needs of the community are high-risk behaviors and self-regulation needs of students. And so we really need to address that through our guidance counselor program. My counselor that I currently work with is amazing. I give you a situation, I've actually been on the phone with outside supports like Child Protection Services on the landline, my guidance counselor on my cell phone, trying to provide supports that students and families need, and it's something that's vital. So that's one thing I'd like to propose, moving that to 100% position between those 2 schools. Another position I'd like to move from 50% to 60% is general music teacher, and that is enabled to allow the Mount Vernon pre-K classes to participate in general music. Currently, pre-K at Manchester and pre-K at Reedfield, and that also includes 5 Wayne students, have the opportunity to access general music, and Mount Vernon students do not currently. And I'd like to make sure that that's an equitable access to all students in our district and provide that for next year. We have a really big pre-K in Mount Vernon, which is exciting. We have 2 sessions this year of 21 students broken up. So that was new. Typically, we've had 1 session, so that was exciting to see that those students in there. And my last request that I put in, and Bridget talked to, is the replacement for the computer in the front office. Sarah Plant, my administrative assistant for the school, has had it crash multiple times, and we've had Norm and Jeff and people that are tightly involved with the technology coming out and trying to kind of support that computer. And as you know, in the work you probably do, it's vital to everything she does and how our school runs each day. So that is also part of my budget requests. Any questions? Jeff, you did all the hard work.
So,
oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was thinking initially that 60-40 kind of split, 3 days and 2 days, but I really, I meet with her all the time, and I really like her to give me some of that input. It really could fluctuate based on the needs, not just for a year, but per week. Sometimes she's like me, where back and forth between the two schools, and just addressing the needs that arise. I would think in my mind it's more of a 60-40 split, but again, I'd really want her input as to what is the need at the time. Luckily, she's super flexible and is able to go back and forth between the schools. But I mean, like I said, it's not unheard of that I'm talking to her on her day off right now and you know, reaching out to her in order to support the needs that we have. And they are significant, and this would be a huge priority. Thank you.
So the music is only missing at the pre-K level, is what you're
That's
saying?
correct. And like I said, by adding that 10% would make it equitable to the other schools and the students in the district.
And you got 20 pre-Ks?
21.
21. Well, we'll raise you up here a little. You only got 20 on the page.
Well, again, Jeff said we've had a few in and outs as well, so it could be.
Oh, Jeff sent one over to you. So that means when you get up to first grade, you're going to have.
It's kind of depends, Gary. Some students are. We had a bigger enrollment than we ever predicted. You know what came out for pre-K registration and in the late spring changed over the summer. We had many new people come in after our screenings were done, and of course we want to open our schools to students to come in for pre-K. And we also had a few students under superintendent's agreements that may or may not continue.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Mrs. Delmeyer.
Thank you.
Up next, we'll have Mrs. Hartford step up for Manchester.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to present our budget and be heard before you make your decisions on which direction you'll go in spending and supporting, or, you know, being economically responsible to your communities. I understand that it is a balancing need. But I do want to really begin by telling you, I wasn't here last year, and I know that you changed the format of the principles that you employed across the elementary schools. And from the feedback that I have from even the children, not the teachers and parents, but the children I have daily conversations with, and allowing a principal to be in a building full-time, it really just brings a whole sense of presence and a sense of possibly security to them. The comments I've heard from the children, last week I had a 5th grade student, I was sitting at lunch with her, and she said, "Are you going to be here next year?" And I said, "Do you think I should be?" I said, "Do you like having, you know, a principal in the building all the time?" And she nodded, and another little boy just eyes went wide, and he really rapidly replied, "Yes, it was a huge help to have a principal in the building all the time." And then the child asked me, "Well, why did our teacher leave last year?" And they were in the classroom that the teacher came in, and she left in the end of September. And I don't know why she left, but the children are left feeling like they were abandoned, or for some reason it was their fault that they left. They don't really know why she left. So having stability and continuity in the building is truly an asset for kids. And I bet Mr. Boston would say the same thing, that he's able to be full-time in Reedfield this year. I think really makes a big difference. On the same note, Mr. Charette came through the school with me the other day, and we were in a kindergarten classroom, and one little girl asked who he was, and we explained, well, he was the boss, the superintendent of the school, and he came for a visit. So then she asked me if his office was in the middle of the hall too. Apparently she thinks my office is in the middle of the hall, and so I'm not sure where we both go for an office in there, but even a kindergarten child is aware of where I am, and your funding and your decision to fund the principals that way, I think really has had a huge impact. So with that, the increases I'm looking for, of course, are a computer for the front office, for the amazing multitasks that they need to do every minute, every hour, and the programs that they run. That's really, technology has outdated itself with what they're using for computers, is where they are with that request. But my big request is for a classroom teacher. We have 2 of every grade. We have 2K, 2-1, 2-2, 1/3, 2 fourth and 1 fifth. So one of my smallest groups, one of my singletons, as we call them, will be leaving and going to the middle school. And so to best be able to support kids next year, I'd like to be able to, technically we'd hire for a 3rd grade, and I'm not sure which classroom teacher would be moving up to 5th, but we'd have 2 fifth, 1 fourth, and 2 third, 2 second, 2 first, 2 kindergarten. So that's really our big request. Unlike the situation at Reed Field, we do have an ed tech that was hired last year, I believe, when the teacher left, when they had to combine classes, and we asked a teacher, they combined the 2nd grade into one classroom for 2nd grade. An ed tech was hired at that time in like November to support the children and the teacher with their academics. And that person was still budgeted through this year. And so I believe in the budget, I did not willingly give this person up, but if I have to choose between a classroom teacher and an ed tech, I would definitely choose the classroom teacher. I think the impact would be greater for the children. So when I'm asking for a classroom teacher, we are losing an ed tech, so it isn't completely a new position, fully funded. And those are my 2 requests. Questions? You could ask Bridget that, right?
You'd be talking about 32, 35, between 32 and 35, depending on what the person takes for benefits. But a full-time ed tech 3 would be between 32 and 35,000.
So right now, in 2nd grade, you have 37 kids?
Yeah.
It says 35.
I actually have 37 right now, I believe. They've come and gone out through this year.
Well, this was just handed to me, so I figured it was up to date, that's all.
Yeah, it's about a week old, January 9. So.
There are 19 in 3rd grade, yeah. And that would be our singleton next year in 4th. Yeah.
Is pre-K, future kindergarten still at 17?
It is at 17, but I know of at least 4 that are not in our pre-K program, but will be entering kindergarten for us. And in Manchester, you may or may not know this, but there's very, very limited daycare options for preschoolers. Micah takes care of, once they hit the school age, that was a huge help for providing daycare. But we really have very, very limited options for daycares, and so if children are already enrolled in Magic Years, I know of one child who goes to CATSI because her daycare is in Augusta. Family can't transport her to Manchester for their half-day program. Another child's at Magic Years. Again, she's already established in a daycare program. So I don't think our pre-Ks are at capacity, mostly because they're half-day programs and the families are working and they wouldn't be able to transport or find daycare on the bus route.
Quick question, and I don't know if you can answer this. Mount Vernon next year, when they go to kindergarten, they're just having 1 class. Is that right? That you're not
Mount
splitting.
Vernon?
You're not splitting next year's kindergarten in Mount Vernon.
Don't believe at this time that will be
Okay. Is
because we do have a few families that are on superintendent's agreements, and that would be something that has to be looked at down the road as to whether they're interested in remaining in Mount Vernon and whether that's something that we can participate.
okay. So yeah.
And that's big for Mount Vernon. We range from typically 15 in a classroom to 20, so, and this year's a little smaller. So it's really tricky in the small schools, because you could have a class size like 11, so it seems so tiny, or it could be like 21 or 22, so it's kind of hard to always predict that. Thank
Yep.
you for asking.
I'm just as a board, I think it would be, if we're going to be splitting, or if they're splitting classrooms, I think that we treat all schools equally, even if it's painful.
Are other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Hartford. Up next, we'll have Dr. Levac from Miranda Cook Middle School.
Good evening. So I have just a few highlights, and I'm just going to talk more about highlights overall of the school, community, and then the support from you, and just some of the really neat things that we've been doing, and we've been able to do it through grants that are right here in the school. So one of the big ones is we've been doing a lot with hands-on industrial work downstairs, especially with the Sebago kids, which is our alternative program. So I've shown you a couple of things they've made. They've been doing some wood burnings. They've made passes for everyone in the school. They're making cornholes. They're going to be working on some outdoor like team building things. They got the supplies donated. A lot of supplies were donated either by a community person who can help with us. Home Depot's helped donate a bunch of wood and everything for us. And then we have the Gear Up grant that has helped purchase some power tools for us, which has been really neat. And we've also been able to use some of those industrial arts activities with some of our other kids that aren't necessarily in our Sebago program, but are interested in that kind of thing. So that's been really neat to watch grow. We have another student who will be starting next week who is on the Acadia team, but is able to also use some of that type of equipment, which will be really neat. Through the MEA program grant, we have the Rube Goldberg, which is an 8th grade team. They're going to be competing in the national competition in March, so that's kind of neat. Even if they don't do well, they've been having a lot of fun. That's been really neat. They named themselves the Genius Squad. And then there's a book contest that the Acadia team is doing, and they got that through the MEA grant as well. And they challenged teachers to be a part of it as well. So it's how many books can they read during this month. And today I was bragging to a student. I was like, I've already read 3. And the kid looked at me and was like, I've read 7. I was like, fine. So those are some of the neat things that we've been doing. I'm just going to go through anything that we had in our budget that was over $1,000 increase. We don't have a ton of huge expenses, I don't think, this year. But the first one is the part-time dean of students / teacher. We currently have a behavioral interventionist, so that position, it would be that position, but it would become a part-time dean, part-time teacher under the contract. It would be an increase of $5,000, but it would include 10 days of summer work, which would allow for him and I, or whoever it might be, to coordinate some school leadership programs and just restorative practices and other things that we can do in our school to help improve us even more. The second one I have is the Wellness Center Administrative Assistant. Currently, she works 12 and a half hours a week, and the proposal is to bring her up to 16 hours a week. So it's only $2,660 over the year. But this person does so much in our school already. She coordinates the appointments for guidance, the counseling collaborative, physical therapist, Vicky, our nurse, and then she's also like the go-to person. So many of our kids have braces, so they need wax for their braces. Sometimes it's emotional support, sometimes it's getting them Tylenol or whatever it may be. And when she's not there, we can really feel it. We do have volunteers who come in, but we're not always able to accommodate everything.
So this person reports to Rebecca, the Wellness Center?
She reports to Phyllis, who's our front office person, so who's our secretary, the administrative assistant. So, but she works in the Wellness Center. She goes to all the Wellness Center meetings with Rebecca. So. Our third one that I have is the team leader position. This is an increase of $1,100. Right now, our team leader for Unified Arts does all the Unified Arts, including world language, but our world language program has really grown over the past couple of years. They've been doing a lot of work 6-12, which has been awesome to see because our goal is to get more and more kids ready to graduate having that proficiency with world language. So this proposal would add a team leader position for world language because they have some very unique needs that are different than Unified Arts needs. Front office computer, so that's for Phyllis Cody. Her computer can't be updated anymore, so she needs a new computer. Then I have the school resource officer. So this is in collaboration with the high school. It's 20% of what it would cost to have the school resource officer, so it's $14,000. And we talked a little bit about it, but about chronic attendance issues, parent and school support. I did put out a survey to our parents. I only got 25 responses, which isn't many, but there was 76% of them wanted it, 12%, which is only 3 people, were indifferent, and then 12% said no. So just so you have that information. And furniture. So I have an increase of $1,600 for furniture. We tried to be creative with it by getting a membership to the Share Center. The Share Center's in Auburn, and we have a very small membership right now, and they've been more than accommodating for us. I think that we owe them a little bit. They've given us a lot of stuff, but you can get whiteboards, you can get very lightly used furniture and equipment there. It's free once you have the membership. So it would be a huge asset for us, especially we'd like to have circle tables and other kinds of things that are collaborative, and they just cost a lot to get brand new, but we can get them through that center for no cost. Well, except for the $600 that the membership is. And then they also have other supplies, so we can get paper. We can just get tons and tons of things to use throughout the school year. And then the other $1,000 would be to get some equipment that we wouldn't be able to get through the Share Center, like stand-up desks. I know we can get like 2 stand-up desks for $500, and then stools as well, because we have a lot of kids that are very fidgety and they need something else to sit on. So. And then the last thing I had on there was the response to intervention. This isn't really a new program for us. It's just been taken out of the instruction line, and they have their own line now. There has been a slight increase because we looked at our incoming students and trying to figure out what we would need for the technology supports that we use with RTI. So a lot of those costs are for Lexia Pro and Reading Plus, which we use for our reading intervention programs, and then Dreambox, which is used for our students who are Tier 3 math. Any questions?
So, my question is, what kind of stool is for fidgety students?
It has I'll have to show you sometime. Okay. They're kind of fun, but they have like a rounded bottom so they can
wobble
back and forth, yeah.
Okay.
So,
uh-huh.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, follow-up question. So for the dean and the teacher position, so if this person does become half dean, half teacher, does that mean it would take away from his teacher's position and we would have to fill that with another person?
We wouldn't have to fill it. We would be changing some of what he's doing.
Okay.
But we wouldn't have to fill it. So it would
Okay.
just be the additional $5,000, but nothing else.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Levac. Up next is Dr. Conway to talk about the Maranacook High School needs.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for your continued support. I know you have a really tough job, and we appreciate all you've done for our communities and our schools. There are 4 programs I want to talk to you about tonight. The first possible addition would be some equipment to our industrial arts program. We're looking at adding a new forge body, which is $4,000, 2 wood lathes, which are $3,000 each, and 2 drill presses at $2,000 each, and $1,000 worth of hand tools. Another possible addition, books for AP US History. Our books are outdated. For AP US History, we have 40 students in 3 different sections, and we need $5,000 for more books. Possible addition of a school resource officer. I know we've talked about it a lot here. We've talked about it at the high school for the last 2 years, at staff meetings, at leadership team meetings. I polled the community. We got under 100 responses, but 75% of the people were supportive of it. And at staff, 66% of staff members were supportive of moving it forward. And then our final possible addition is a JMG job coach. JMG works with at-risk students. Jay, Sean, and I met with the head of JMG for the state, and possibly adding a job coach for next year for our students, for our at-risk kids, might cost $18,000, but there's also the possibility of it being free. They're looking at that, and they're hopeful of that. And that's kind of what we're planning on, but we wanted it either way, so we put that $18,000 in the budget. And that's all the high school has.
Out of curiosity, what does the JMG stand for?
Sure. Jobs for Maine grads.
Okay.
They work with at-risk students, and they help them on career paths, not just college, but workforce and beyond.
Thank you.
Really a very effective position. I've seen them in Lewiston and other schools, and very effective. Kathy?
So yeah, I've seen jobs for Maine grads. It's an awesome program. My question is, how would the alternative that you currently have program fit in with that? Would it replace it? Would it be in addition to that? Is it the same group of kids? Is it a different population?
Yeah, it's another support. Not necessarily just, it wouldn't just be for our alternative kids, it would be for all students. They have a caseload of about 30 kids, and our alternative team is much smaller, about 10 kids. So they would work with a much larger array of students. Betty?
For the school resource officer, have you explored federal grants for this person?
Yeah, I spent a few Saturdays and Sundays looking at different grants for it, and most of them are tied into school improvement grants, which we're not currently under. So I haven't found any grants for us.
The federal, through the federal justice?
I haven't found any.
So I have a question. So College Board doesn't support access to online books anymore?
They are outdated, and our source they're not tied into the online resources anymore. Like, we can't access them because our subscription has run out, and that's what part of the 5,000 would do.
Okay. Now, are we slowly transitioning to have all of our books turn into digital books and use our computers to read it, or are we still going to continue to use textbooks?
Yeah, we've done that some in the district, and Nancy might be able to answer that better from a district perspective than I can. I know at the high school we've done that some, but still the preferred method is hands-on for now,
Okay.
supported by online technology.
Okay. Okay. Following question. So these new AP books, I'm trying to see, are we not using College Board kind of AP books, or are we still going down that route? So it's just to renew the College Board subscription to their online access, and that includes their books?
And that includes books. So
Okay.
5,000 includes both.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter how many students you put on it?
It does. We currently have 40 students, and the 5,000 would cover that. Next year, we're scheduled for about the same number of kids.
Only 40.
For that AP U.S. History. So it's one version of U.S. History, one level.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Dr. Conway.
Sure.
So it's, the curriculum is going to be the same? No change in curriculum?
Correct.
I do have one question, Dr. Levesque. Were you guys going to do kind of a retake of that survey for the SRO?
I put it in the, you continue to put it in the newspaper for our newsletter that we do, like, everywhere again. It was in for 2 different rounds. I can continue.
Same result?
What?
Same result, both rounds?
I had 9 and then whatever, like 25, so got 9 and 16.
Oh, okay.
It's only, parents who want to read it, but it is consistent with what the high school got for response. With the percentage. But I can definitely say I
Source, the additional on the resource officer, I appreciate, knowing feedback on it, but I think it's a very broad term and title, and I would recommend that we be very careful that the position, the duties, be carefully delineated, and that will help all the stakeholders, the community, the students, the teachers, ourselves, and the poor resource officer know exactly what is expected and what is not necessarily something they should be getting into. Everything from, as was brought up by the citizen questions, whether they're going to be a SWAT officer, and whether they're going to be also privacy things for the students. If a student is coming from a law enforcement involvement, how much of that is going to be shared with the administration, with the teachers, with other students, and how much needs to be kept private for that student's safety and rights. But just as examples of things that I think would need to be watched very carefully. Thank you.
The other question I have is, in the middle school, we were talking about using that facility downstairs? Is any thought put into that this time around?
Right now, we're using it, we use it for the bike club. Oh, sorry. So we use it right now with our bike club, and then we use it for the Sebago team with what their period 4 every day. They do some kind of industrial arts or hands-on work. And right now, we're trying to expand that. So we're really I would say this year has been the beginning stages. They've been getting tools like power tools. We're working on getting more power tools that are battery operated, just to make sure that we're meeting code as far as the school building goes. But we're continuing to work on it. We still have wood in there from before, so we're trying to expand it and build it out.
So when do you expect to come up with some definitive ideas?
Do you mean like an IA program and have?
Yeah.
Not this year.
When do you expect to have some knowledge to discuss that topic?
What do you mean? What are you looking for?
Yeah, what would it look like?
We would have to redo the whole room, so it'd cost a lot of money to fix it. We'd have to, because I think we'd have to get certain kinds of outlets for safety. Then we'd have to hire another staff member, and then we'd have to change our schedule, because we're working on our schedule right now to incorporate it so that all students have year-long world language. So that, if that helps. So there would be, I'm not sure exactly of the cost, but when I've spoken to people about it, it would be like $50,000 to update the downstairs, and then we'd also have to get a staff member for it.
So very little effort is going into that thought process?
Right. Yep. Other than that, yep.
Is it a staff priority?
No. Not, honestly, right now, we're working on our academics. So, and we incorporate a lot of those, we try to incorporate a lot of hands-on activities in our core program. and we're really working on getting our math scores up. So I would say for us right now, our focus is really math and getting some of those scores up where we need to be, and also working on some more intervention strategies. I'd say, obviously we would love to have that, but I'm hesitant because I'm not sure where we would take the time from.
So you have to, if there's any other, any board questions?
Any board questions besides the ones I asked? No board questions. You're happy. Well, that's cool. Citizens' comments are gone, so now we're at board discussion.
I would like to bring up something. I read an interesting article by the Kennebec Journal. South Portland to change controversial proficiency-based grading at high school. It kind of goes throughout the whole article explaining how there was a couple challenges that the high school in South Portland had to overcome. One of it was that the incurred expense that having this kind of new grading system go through. They use a program that we also use. It's called Jump Rope. It's kind of costing their district $26,000. I'm not sure how much it costs our district, but it's quite interesting since we continue to kind of have this debate about transitioning from A through F to 1 through 4. So kind of moving forward, I would like us to kind of continue that discussion since the legislature changed the rules, which doesn't mandate it anymore. But it just seems that kind of the problems are coming out of the woodworking, and it's kind of a continual discussion.
So, Alex, I'm gonna jump in and address that a little bit. We actually have a committee of middle school and high school teachers that actually met for the first time yesterday, and we will be meeting, working on some of these things. And I know you raised the issue about what the state recommends and stuff. So part of this committee is going to be addressing things like recommendations around the graduation policy, grading, multiple pathways, what does it mean for special education, as well as a reporting system of some kind. Because Jump Rope is really a reporting system. It's not a grading system. So I just caution you when you're reading about what's going on in South Portland, that's not the same thing that's happening here. There are some bigger issues in South Portland that have to do with how they're getting that average within that system, and they have some cultural practices that they're doing also that we don't necessarily do the same thing. So just kind of take it with a grain of salt, because I think it can be, you can kind of jump on board with, well, look at this big school system and they're dumping it. There's a lot of other things going on behind the scenes that aren't reported in the paper with that. So we are addressing that, and that's why we have a committee of teachers and administrators, and we've got our curriculum director with us also to be able to start to address those things. And we will be bringing that back to the board once we get those things kind of hammered out a little bit. So it's a great question, but just so you know.
I'm not satisfied with that answer. So are you trying to change the grading system or not? That's what I want to know.
So are we?
I mean, are we going to go down the road that's going to harm our kids in the future?
No.
Can I say
We're
something?
always going to be looking to make sure we're doing what's best for the students. But I also would want to say kind of openly that we're in a budget meeting, and that having this discussion at the budget meeting is probably not the best time to do this. We talked about being prepared for meetings and such, so if this is something that we want to look at in more detail, I'd rather have the opportunity to be able to be ready for the discussion, fully ready for the discussion. And this is a budget meeting, and I'd rather stick to budget topics at this time, so. Sean, go ahead.
Okay, well, I guess on that note, I would like to discuss this
Yep.
at a further meeting, and what is being done, because this is a very
Yep.
important topic
That's
for
fair.
parents
Yep.
and students.
Yep.
And it's been had bobbing around the state for as long as I've worked at the
Yep.
state. So I'd like to know what is being done
Yep.
for future meetings. So
Yep.
it can be added to a future agenda.
Absolutely.
So there's nobody from the board here on this curriculum committee?
No.
Okay.
There is a curriculum subcommittee.
Right.
And it's been discussed.
Where we discuss this stuff also with Nancy.
So I guess I'd like a full update on what the discussion's been.
Some of it is wait and see now with a new administration, new education commissioner and everything.
Any further discussions for tonight?
Yes, I want to go back to the budget. So, in thinking about all the needs of the elementary schools, and there are a lot of needs, and I know that we need more staff members at individual schools, I would like us to think about something that maybe people don't want to think about, but if we looked across the whole district at all of the kindergarten kids, all of the first grade kids, all of the second, all of the third, all of the fourth, and all of the fifth being together, would we have enough staff members and enough teachers to meet the needs of all the kids if they were all together in some kind of a consolidation? I would really like us to look at that and really dig into what that would look like and how much money it might save us and what it might look like. I think it's time for us to really think about going down that path.
It's a 10-year path, and it is something that's very, very important. Until we get our name in,
Gary, can I just say something about that? It really doesn't have to be a 10-year path because we've got 4 elementary school buildings, and if we started thinking about putting all of our grade level kids together in the buildings that we have,
we could do it.
we could do it. We don't have to wait 10 years. I mean, I'm working in a school district right now that they're on the top of the list of getting a new building, but it's going to be a while. And in the meantime, they're doing exactly what I'm talking about, to better meet the needs of the
Totally agree with
students and the community.
Yep. A lot of busing, but we could do it.
Yes. Put on another agenda, or another meeting at some other time, are there, with the current RSU that we have, are there legal parameters that would hinder consolidation that I'm just not aware of? I mean, I've heard that each town has to have a school, or at least Wayne does? No?
No.
There's nothing different for Wayne. The only thing different, oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know what.
The only thing different for Wayne is, and I'd have to pull out the consolidation plan, I haven't read it in a while. I don't think there's anything that would keep us from consolidating into a single school or using one school for like K1 and another one, I don't think there is. What the plan talks about is if we're closing a school, there is a set process that we have to go through, and it's a 2-year process. And truthfully, even when we go through that, and you have to work with the state, you have to work with the lawyers, and even if we go through that and this board decides to close a school, that town can still vote to keep that school open. They would have to pay extra to do that, but it's a very complicated process, and it takes a lot of help from a lot of people to do that. But I don't think, the only thing that's different in Wayne is Wayne's deed has a little tweak to it. that truthfully, in the other towns, if we close the school, I believe the town gets first dibs on it. But Wayne's deed has something about when it was originally donated back in like 1920. And I think there may be something that has to go, the original heirs have to be involved in that. So, but as far as, I don't believe there's anything in the consolidation plan about not allowing us to reorganize within our district.
I guess, and the other thing I'd love to know is the staff's view on the benefits or the harmful side effects or whatever, just because you guys are the experts, and I would prefer to hear what you guys think.
Any other questions?
This kind of goes in the same vein. I have said this, I mean, one of the examples in the budget tonight is that, I don't know, blows my mind that kids, just because they go to this school or that school, they don't get the same opportunities. I mean, if you go to pre-K, at Mount Vernon Elementary, you don't get music. It's just, I'm not saying anyone does it intentional. Or if you go to this school, when you look at the number of students in a class, because you go to school X, it's the same district. The kid, I'm not saying you're getting any worse opportunity, but every child, to me, this is a tough budget because every child deserves to have the same opportunity. And there are probably many more examples I don't know about that student, just because they go to a different school, isn't getting the same opportunity. And I have a real problem with that.
I agree with you, Sean. Any more comments?